Imagine it's 1940. The world is on fire. Europe is at war. America is still crawling out of the Great Depression. And somewhere in Detroit, a car rolls off the line that doesn't just look different from everything else on the road. It looks like it came from the future. To understand why the Lincoln-Zephyr mattered, why it still matters, you have to understand the world it was born into. The 1930s were a decade of contradictions. On one hand, crippling poverty. On the other, an almost desperate hunger for glamour, for escape, for the dream of something better. Hollywood was churning out movie stars. The airwaves crackled with big band music. And Americans who could still afford a little luxury wanted it to feel genuinely luxurious. Not just expensive, but visionary. But here's the thing about American luxury cars in the early 1930s. They were magnificent, and they were almost comically outdated the moment they hit the street. They were enormous, heavy, designed like bank vaults on wheels. Beautiful in their own way, certainly, powerful. But they belonged to a different era, the era of the horse carriage, scaled up and bolted to an internal combustion engine. They were not the future. And one man, more than anyone else, knew it. Edsel Ford, son of the legendary Henry Ford, heir to one of the most powerful industrial empires in human history, and in many ways, the tragic hero of this story. Edsel was not his father. Where Henry was rough-edged, stubborn, a self-made titan who trusted nothing but his own instincts, Edsel was cultured. He traveled. He studied European design. He understood in his bones that the world of automobiles was about to change forever, and that Lincoln needed to change with it. There was just one problem. His father didn't always agree. Edsel Ford spent much of his life fighting quiet battles inside the Ford Motor Company. He pushed for better styling, more modern engineering, a more sophisticated approach to the luxury market. Sometimes he won. Often, his father overruled him. But in the mid-1930s, Edsel Ford saw an opportunity, and he seized it. He was going to build Lincoln a car that could compete in the modern world. A car that was sleek and fast and light. A car that looked like tomorrow. He was going to build the Zephyr. Every great car starts with a sketch on a piece of paper. And every great sketch starts with a man, or in this case, two men with a vision. The first was John Tjarda, born in the Netherlands in 1897. Tjarda was an aeronautical engineer and designer who had fallen completely, hopelessly in love with the shape of things that moved through air efficiently. He was fascinated with drag coefficients, with airflow, with the science of speed. Tjarda had been working on a concept he called the Sturkenberg, a radical rear-engine aerodynamic design that would have looked astonishing rolling down any street in America. When he joined Briggs Manufacturing in Detroit, his ideas caught the attention of the very people who needed them most, the Lincoln Motor Company. His original concept was bold to the point of being almost unbuildable for mass production, but it sparked something. It ignited a conversation that would evolve, transform, and ultimately produce one of the most influential American cars ever made. But Tjarda needed a partner. And Edsel Ford knew exactly who that partner should be. Eugene Gregorie, known to everyone as simply Bob, was Edsel Ford's hand-picked head of design. He was 24 years old when he joined Ford. 24. And even at that extraordinary young age, he already had what the best designers always have, an instinct for proportion that is almost impossible to teach. Edsel Ford trusted Gregorie absolutely. And when Edsel told Bob Gregorie to take Tjarda's radical concept and turn it into something that Lincoln could actually build, something that could sit in a showroom and make a person's jaw drop, Gregorie got to work. What emerged from that collaboration was extraordinary. The Lincoln-Zephyr debuted on November 2nd, 1935, as a 1936 model, and the American automotive world quite literally stopped and stared. Here was a car with integrated fenders, not the bolt-on, separate appendages of the classic era, but fenders that flowed seamlessly into the body, a low, raked windscreen, a long, tapered hood that swept down to a prow-like front grille inspired not by other cars, but by the leisure speedboats of the era, sleek Chris-Craft boats that the wealthy use on weekends, a roof line so low and graceful that it seemed impossible it contained real human beings inside. It was, by almost any measure, the most aerodynamically advanced production car in America. Its drag coefficient of 0.45 was actually lower than the famous Chrysler Airflow, the car that had previously been considered the pinnacle of streamlined design. And they named it for the Greek god of the west wind, Zephyrus, the gentle, warm breath of spring, the wind that comes before the change of season. It was the perfect name. A beautiful body is nothing without a heart, and the Lincoln-Zephyr's heart was something genuinely unusual in the American market of the 1930s. When everyone else was building luxury cars around V8s and inline 8 engines, Lincoln put a V12 under the hood of the Zephyr, a compact, 75-degree, flathead V12 developed from Ford's already legendary flathead V8, but stretched, refined, and re-engineered into 12 cylinders of smooth, silky power. Now, here's something important to understand about that engine choice. V12 engines don't just produce power, they produce character. A V12 runs differently from a V8. It's smoother, more cultured. The firing intervals are more closely spaced, which means the power delivery is more even, more refined, like the difference between a rough-hewn table and a piece of fine cabinetry. Both are functional. Only one belongs in a Lincoln. In its earliest form, the 1936 to 1939 models, the engine displaced 267 cubic inches, or 4.4 liters. By 1940, it had grown to 292 cubic inches, 4.8 liters, producing 110 horsepower. That gave the Zephyr a top speed of 90 miles an hour, which in 1940 was genuinely quick. The engine was compact enough to sit low in the chassis, another contributor to the Zephyr's impressively low center of gravity and its flat, aerodynamic hood. Everything about this car's engineering was in service of its shape. The shape came first. The engineering had to accommodate it, but it wasn't perfect. Nothing revolutionary ever is. The early Zephyr V12 had its quirks. Like the Ford flathead V8s of the same era, it was vulnerable to hot spots, areas where the exhaust passages ran through the cylinder block and could cause overheating. The earliest examples also suffer from oil pressure issues, requiring Lincoln's engineers to go back and upgrade the oil pump. And the suspension was Henry Ford-era transverse springs, front and rear, already considered somewhat dated by the time the Zephyr launched. The brakes, too, evolved over time. The 1936 to 1938 cars used cable-activated brakes, functional but increasingly old-fashioned. From 1939 onward, Lincoln switched to hydraulic brakes, bringing the Zephyr fully into line with modern engineering practice. These were not fatal flaws. They were the growing pains of a genuinely advanced design being built within constraints of an industry still figuring out how to produce the future at scale. And Lincoln fixed them year by year as the Zephyr matured. By 1940, the Lincoln-Zephyr was arguably the most complete it had ever been. A larger engine, more trunk space, refined styling, a full range of body styles to suit every taste. It was ready to become the foundation for something even greater. 1940. By any measure, it was a pivotal year in the story of the Lincoln-Zephyr, and it began with an ending. On January 24th, 1940, the last Lincoln Model K, the great, grand, impossibly expensive flagship that had defined Lincoln luxury since the late 1920s, rolled off the line. The Model K was a masterpiece. It was also, by 1940, an anachronism. A $14,000 automobile in a country where $14,000 could buy you an entire house. In a depression-scarred America, there simply weren't enough buyers for a car like that. The future of Lincoln, it was now clear, was the Zephyr. For 1940, the Zephyr lineup was the broadest it had ever been. You could have a sedan, stately, formal, built for the person who rode to the opera. A coupe, sporty, lower-roofed, built for the person who drove there themselves. A club coupe, the synthesis of the two, elegant but personal. A convertible coupe, for those moments when nothing less than open sky would do. The prices were extraordinary by today's standards, but approachable by Lincoln's standards of the era. The two-door sedan started at just $1,275, roughly $29,000 in today's money. The four-door version was $1,320. These were genuine luxury cars, built to Lincoln standards, at prices that weren't completely out of reach for a prosperous American family. That was the genius of what Edsel Ford had created. He had democratized Lincoln just enough, brought it down from the impossible heights of the Model K, without compromising what Lincoln stood for. The Zephyr felt special. It felt exclusive. It just didn't require a small fortune to own one. And then in 1940, Edsel Ford did something else. Something that would echo through automotive history for the next 80 years and counting. He created the Continental. The story behind the Continental is one of those beautiful accidents that sometimes produces the greatest things in design history. Edsel Ford had been vacationing in Europe, studying the car culture there, as he often did, and he returned to America with a specific request for Bob Gregorie. Design me a personal car, something for me, something I would actually want to drive. The brief was as simple and as radical as that, a personal car, for Edsel Ford, built on the Zephyr platform. Make it special. Gregorie started sketching. He stretched the Zephyr's wheelbase. He lowered the roofline further. He added a Continental-style external spare tire mounted at the rear, a design element borrowed from pre-war European touring cars that gave the car a unique, dramatic silhouette. He refined. He revised. He refined again. What he produced was something that has never really been surpassed as a statement of American luxury car design. The Lincoln Continental was, in the judgment of the Museum of Modern Art in New York, one of only 8 automobiles in the entire history of the automobile to be considered genuine works of art. It was added to MoMA's permanent collection, and it began as a 1940 model, a submodel of the Lincoln-Zephyr line, partially hand-built, because the production dies from machine pressing hadn't even been constructed yet. Only 350 cabriolets and 54 club coupes were built in that first year. 350 cars, 54 coupes. That's all, and yet they launched the longest-running nameplate in Lincoln's history. The Continental name would survive for decades, outliving the Zephyr that spawned it, outliving the men who designed it, outliving almost everything. For all its success, the Lincoln-Zephyr's time was short. Beautiful things often are. As early as 1941, the Zephyr name itself began to fade. That model year, Lincoln restructured. The cars were simply called Lincolns, the Zephyr mark absorbed into the broader brand. The Zephyr-based Lincoln Custom replaced both the grand old K-Series cars and the town limousine. All Lincolns were now Zephyr-based, even if none of them wore the Zephyr name. And then came December 7th, 1941, and with it, the end of everything for a while. The United States government ordered all civilian automobile production halted. Ford, General Motors, Chrysler, every major manufacturer turned its factories over to the war effort. The Lincoln Motor Company produced its final Lincoln Zephyr on February 10th, 1942. And then the lines went quiet. That was it. No fanfare, no ceremony, just the last car, and then silence, and then a country at war. When production resumed after the war, the Zephyr name was gone. The post-war Lincolns, sold from 1946 to 1948 and known today as the H-Series, were still Zephyr-based in every meaningful engineering sense. The same 292 cubic inch V12, the same fundamental architecture, but the name Zephyr never came back to those cars. Sometimes, names carry weight that transcends the cars that wore them. Zephyr had been the name of a revolution. And perhaps Lincoln decided that a revolution should only happen once. Edsel Ford never saw the post-war Lincolns. He died in May of 1943 of stomach cancer at just 49 years old. He never got to see what his vision ultimately produced. He never got to see the Continental become an icon. He never got to see the Zephyr's legacy ripple through decades of American automotive design. History has a way of being cruel to the visionaries who light the path for others to walk. So why does the 1940 Lincoln Zephyr still matter? Why are we talking about it 85 years after the last one rolled off the line? Because it changed American luxury. Full stop. Before the Zephyr, American luxury cars were defined by size, by weight, by the sheer imposing mass of them. After the Zephyr, the game shifted. Aerodynamics mattered. Integration mattered. The way a car moved through the world, not just how it commanded it, but how it flowed through it, became part of what luxury meant. The Zephyr proved that a luxury car didn't have to be enormous. It didn't have to weigh 4,000 pounds and carry a sticker price that exceeded most Americans' annual salaries. It could be refined, efficient, beautiful in a way that was about line and form and proportion rather than pure scale. And it saved Lincoln. Let's be absolutely clear about that. When the Zephyr launched in 1936 and sold 15,000 units, accounting for 80% of Lincoln's total sales in that first year, it proved that Lincoln could survive the Depression, that there was still a market for the Lincoln name, if that name was attached to the right car. And of course, there is the Continental. Every Lincoln Continental that has ever existed, and the Continental name has been applied to Lincolns on and off for 8 decades now. Every one of them traces its lineage back to that first extraordinary, partially hand-built 1940 Lincoln Continental, back to Edsel Ford's personal car, back to Bob Gregorie's sketches, back to a Zephyr platform stretched and lowered and refined until it transcended the ordinary. The Lincoln-Zephyr nameplate would actually return once more, briefly. In 2006, Lincoln launched a new Zephyr sedan, a modern midsize luxury car that acknowledged the heritage of its name. It was renamed the MKZ the following year. But for one model year, the name Zephyr blew through American showrooms again, the West Wind returning. But it's the original, the 1936 to 1942 cars, and perhaps most of all the 1940 model, sitting at the peak of the Zephyr's development and at the dawn of the Continental era, that collectors and historians and passionate car people keep coming back to. These are the cars that defined what was possible, that showed American manufacturers and American buyers that the future of luxury was not in brute scale, but in elegant motion. Edsel Ford dreamed of something better. Bob Gregorie gave it shape. John Charda gave it purpose. And thousands of workers in Detroit brought it to life, car by car, from 1935 to 1942. They called it the Zephyr, the West Wind, the gentle harbinger of change. And in the history of the American automobile, few cars have brought more change or ushered it in with more style. This has been the story of the 1940 Lincoln Zephyr. If you loved it, if it stirred something in you the way these great old cars always do, hit that like button and subscribe, because on this channel, every week, we go looking for the cars that change the world. And believe me, we are just getting started. Total estimated read time, approximately 18 to 22 minutes at documentary narration pace. Target character count, 20,000 characters. Music suggestions, Lana Del Rey. Adjacent cinematic instrumentals for the intro. Period-appropriate big band jazz for archival sections. Hans Zimmer. Style swells for the Continental reveal and closing sequence. B-roll requirements. Period newsreel footage, available through Getty/AP archives. Restored Lincoln Zephyr and Continental vehicles for hero shots. Archival photographs of Edsel Ford, Bob Gregorie, John Charda. Factory footage from Lincoln's Detroit plant, 1930s, 40s era. Period automobile advertisements. Here's your closing CTA, written to match the documentary tone of the script. Visual. The camera slowly pushes in on the Zephyr's hood ornament. Chrome catching the last of the golden light. The engine ticks as it cools. Stillness. Narrator warm, unhurried, like the end of a great story at a fireside. The Lincoln Zephyr didn't just build cars. It built a legacy that's still rolling down American roads today. In every Continental, in every Lincoln that dared to be beautiful rather than just big. If this story moved you the way these machines move me, go ahead and hit that like button right now. It takes 1 second, and it tells me you want more stories like this one. Subscribe if you haven't already. Every week on this channel, we pull one forgotten legend out of the garage, blow the dust off it, and remind the world why it mattered. Packards, Duesenbergs, Cords, Hudsons, the great cars that America somehow half forgot. We remember them here. And if you've got a suggestion, a car you want us to cover, a story you think deserves to be told, drop it in the comment below. Some of the best episodes on this channel started with a comment from someone exactly like you. Until next time, keep driving something worth remembering.